we turned this into this to taste something kind of like this. Let's show you how we did it. Welcome back, brewers and beer lovers, to Flying Wombat TV, the channel all about beer, banter, and bloody good times. And today we are making a nice, crisp summer XPA. So let's get these grains into the mill and let's get brewing. All right, let's talk grain bill. We are going to be using 3.8 kilos of ale malt, regular pale ale malt, 800 grams of wheat malt for that silky body, creaminess, etc. And then 200 grams each of medium crystal malt and carafoam, otherwise known as carapils, to give a little bit of extra head retention, bit of foam, help out that body a little bit, etc. Anyway, so all of this is basically making just a really light bodied pale ale. And then it's gonna really let the hops shine through rather than having a big caramel body and having that be the star of the show. It's gonna be all about the fresh hop character for this style of beer. And rice hulls. If you haven't used these before, they're a loudering aid, makes it easier for the wort and the beer to actually flow through the grains, especially when you're using like a lot of wheat or a lot of oat, things like that nature that make a bit of a porridge texture. So we're gonna use, I don't know, a few hundred grams of this, maybe like 250 grams of this, like half a pound, just to make sure that all the wort can flow through properly and we don't get a stuck sparge. Time to get mashing in with my ridiculously large mash paddle for something this size. Every time we do a brew day on this thing, I tell myself I'm gonna get a smaller one, and every time I forget. Classic man problem, it's always too big.
That's a good problem.
Isn't your wife always complaining that you're too big of a mash paddle?
Your head is a mash tun, mate.
If your system, by the way, doesn't recirculate your wort like this, it doesn't really matter. It's useful. Basically what it allows you to do is just get some extra efficiency because the liquid keeps passing through the grains, so you do get a little bit of a better extraction, and it helps to regulate the temperature because it's always moving around, and this thing can heat up on its own. Temperature gets held at a more steady rate throughout the entire mash, but again, you don't really need it. A lot of home brewers use like an esky kind of setup and they mash in that. That is perfectly fine. For that type of setup, you can use our website, by the way. We've got a bunch of calculators on there, like strike water calculators. So if you're unsure what temperature your water should be before you throw your grains in, you can jump over to theflyingwombat.com.au and you can punch in your numbers and get spat out an answer for your strike water, for calculating your hydrometer corrections, for all of that type of brewing stuff. Head over to the website and get yourself some sick merch while you're at it. Grains done. Briefly talking about water, we are using 15 liters of water at 66 degrees Celsius for the mash. Don't know what that is in imperial or, freedom units, so Odin, up here. But yeah, for 1 hour, by the way. So this is gonna make a really high fermentable wort, which means it will be a pretty light body beer, which is exactly what we're going for with, a barbecue summer style beer. Nah, come back. Lost the little stopper thing. All right, we're done mashing in. So we're gonna put this top filter on, gonna put this thing on top of that, and then we're gonna start recirculating. So 1 hour, 65 degrees Celsius, and then we'll be back to start our sparging. It's been an hour and we are now ready to start sparging. So let's take all of this off, lift up our grain bed, and then we can start straining it some hot water through here. All right. I think we're on. We're on. There we go. Okay, so we are gonna start sparging. If you're new to brewing or you've just never done that before, basically what that means is we're gonna run hot water, in this case at 80 degrees Celsius, over top of these grains, with the idea being that you run them through the grains and it extracts a little bit of extra sugar because these grains are just soaked in sugar and all the sugary water that's been passing through them, which is the wort. And that what that means is even though once this liquid drains out, there's gonna be a bunch of sugar that's still trapped inside that grain bed. So passing the hot water over it basically means we get a little bit extra beer for the dollars that we're spending on this brew day. So there's a couple different ways that you can sparge. You can do something called fly sparging, which is where you have a steady flow of water that's going on top of the grain bed at the same speed that the liquid is draining out. That's my preferred method, but seeing as we often do double brew days on this channel to make sure we can actually get as much content as possible out to you guys, I can't do that because I use this vessel for fly sparging for that boiler. So we're doing batch sparging, which basically means you just pour water over in batches at a time, let it drain out, pour more water over the top, rinse and repeat until you've done all of your water. Still works pretty much just as well. So that's all you can do, just do that. We are now boiling and ready to rock and roll. So we're gonna throw in our bittering hops to begin with. So 15 grams of Chinook to start off the boil. Away they go. Start your clocks, and now we will come back at the 45-minute mark to throw in our whirl flock, and then once again at the 10-minute mark to throw in our first round of aroma and flavor hops, and then at flame out, we'll throw in another round of, I guess, Whirlpool / hop steeping hops. So yeah, start clocks and we'll see you soon.
Nearly over the edge.
The beast almost overflowed.
We paid attention this time. Now go back down, you naughty.
You dirty dog.
Gotta love boilovers.
Hate it. Hate it. I'm the cleaner. Okay, now is as good a time as any to get a gravity reading on what will become our XPA. So, this is the pre-boil reading. So the boil's just started, so it's fine. We had about 28 liters in there. I think, something along that ballpark. We are currently sitting at 1.045. That's actually a little bit lower than I was expecting. Fair enough, is what it is. So this will probably finish up around 1.049, give or take. Ferment down to 1.01, about 5.4% ABV is what I suspect this will finish at. Somewhere around there. So anyway, I'm happy, that's fine. It's a beer.
It's a beer.
It's a beer. 10 minutes left to go in the boil, so time to add your flavor, well, first addition of flavor and aroma hops. In this case, it was 15 grams each of Amarillo and Galaxy. We'll come back when this is at 0 minutes or 60 minutes, flame out, and then we'll throw in our final hop addition. Okay, now we are finished boiling for the XPA. So let's go flame out, and we're gonna throw in 20 grams each of Galaxy and Amarillo. So just throw them in as you've gone flame out, and then we are just gonna leave this for 20 minutes, and we're gonna put the lid on it to help contain some of those hop oils that are just pouring out of it right now. Leave that for 20 minutes, and then we'll come back, start cooling this down to yeast pitching temperature, and whack it into a fermenter. The new fermenter.
Ooh.
Video previously released. That one.
Oh dear, mate.
Okay, so there's a lot of water everywhere because I'm a bit special today, and here's one of the challenges of trying to do stuff on camera whilst you're doing stuff with very hot liquids. We're doing a double brew day, so we're using 2 different chillers, and I connected a water out to the, like liquid comes out of it from the tap onto the return of the plate chiller. So basically put it on the wrong one. So the one where that liquid is meant to drain out somewhere, I connected another one that pumps liquid, and it exploded everywhere. And then it exploded on me, and then it exploded on Odin.
That exploded on me first. I'm still wet. That shit was warm as well.
It was hot. Anyway, not burnt. And
yeah.
Be careful. Yeah. Always pay attention what you're doing with your hoses.
That scared the shit out of me when first.
And I just heard, while I was mucking around trying to fix the taps, Odin scream from inside, "Make it stop!" But it's okay, because the beer is safe.
We might not be.
No, we're not. Anyway, that is all. We are now finished with the brew day. We're going to start pumping this around and cooling it all down. Where's the pump thing? Over there. Okay. Start pumping it around, cooling it down by whatever means you guys are cooling your beer down with. And Once this is at yeast pitching temperature, we're gonna whack it into a fermenter and then we are good to chuck those yeasty boys in. So I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about yeast. We would have preferred to have used US-05, but I was unprepared and unplanned, so we're gonna be using S04. So basically the English variant, very similar flavor profile, just gives a little bit more of a fruity esteriness in comparison to the US-05, but it'll do the same job. You know, it's a brewer's yeast. So we're gonna whack that into this snub nose over here, which we've just finished cleaning, and then we're gonna let it do its thing. So we'll ferment at room temperature because we don't have temp control on this thing set up yet. So it'll be around, 18 degrees Celsius. I expect fermentation time will be a week and a half to 2 weeks. When it's about, say, 7 days in, I'm gonna throw in our dry hops, which will be 15 grams each of Amarillo and Galaxy. We'll leave those in for, say, 3 days sort of thing. By that point, we'll take a quick gravity reading. If gravity's been stable for 3 days in a row, we're good to transfer into the keg and start tasting this bad boy. So once this is cooled down, we'll get to transferring. Let's get a quick sample of this one. See what kind of color we're working with. Just kind of a generic golden beer looking sort of color. It's super murky now, but that will clean right up after fermentation. I was about to drink it. Let's get a gravity reading.
Not a beer yet.
Not a beer yet. All right. And we are at 1.051. So this will ferment out to 1.01, 5.4%, I want to say, somewhere in that ballpark. So yeah, good XPA territory, mid 5%ers. Nice, happy. So because it is currently winter in Australia right now, keeping things cold isn't actually that much of a problem. The issue is keeping things warm enough. So we do actually have a temperature controller. This is just a really cheap one we bought from China on eBay. I'll drop a link down below if any of you want to use this. Basically what this means is I can attach this heat belt to the snub nose fermenter. That heat belt is then plugged in to the temperature controller, which is then got its little temperature probe going down inside the thermo well. So I can set this to ferment at, say, let's go with 20 degrees Celsius. Yeah, 20 degrees Celsius for US-05 yeast. And then that's gonna be right in the optimal range, and we're not gonna have to worry about, when the temperature drops to 10 degrees at night, it ruining the fermentation. It's all taken care of. And then come summer, we'll probably look at getting a chiller coil to sit inside this so that we have temperature control just like the best of the best for when it gets too hot. Alrighty, we are done with brew day now. So that is now coming out of this at yeast pitching temperature, which means we can transfer it into our brand new fermenter. So this is now ready for its maiden voyage. Let's open up the top. Oh, did that on a bit tight. And then we'll start transferring into this bad boy. Oh, I forgot to release the pressure. Whoops, don't make my mistake. Totally forgot I pressurized that before. Okay, let's pop this out of the way. Time to start transferring. Oops. It's not a brew day unless you get just a little bit messy. And transfer. All right. So we did find our US-05 yeast, which is awesome. That's a more ideal yeast strain for what we're going for here because we want the hops to be the star of the show. So that will take about, a week to 2 weeks to ferment. At around the week mark to week and a bit mark, we'll test the gravity. When it's around 1.013, we'll throw in our dry hops, which will be 20 grams each of Amarillo and Galaxy. So once this is finished transferring, we'll pitch our yeast. That is just about 21 liters of wort on the nose. So time to pitch our yeast, 11.5 grams of US-05. So yes, yeast starters, I haven't done them in a while. I do need to start doing them again because it is the better way to pitch your yeast, but So we'll pitch it in and away we go. Now we'll just close this bad boy up, set the pressure fermentation process, and then we'll whack on that heat belt with the temperature probe and keep it at a set steady temperature of 20 degrees Celsius throughout fermentation. We will be back when we do dry hopping in about a week and a bit. And we're back. So it has now been a week and it's time to dry hop this thing. But first, we are gonna take a little gravity sample because I wanna show you guys how to do that with something that is under pressure if you haven't taken gravity samples out of something from a a ball lock post before. So basically all we need to do is grab our hydrometer and our measuring cylinder, and because this is going to come out frothy because it is fermenting under pressure, it means that it's going to be a little bit gassy, a little bit frothy when it actually comes out into the measuring jug. So when you do this, like coming out of something like a stainless steel uni tank, you've got something called a pig's tail. So it's like this coil of stainless steel that basically helps with the pressure differential when it's coming out of a pressurized vessel out into the environment. We don't have that for this type of thing. So we're basically just gonna take a sample into this, let the foam settle down, and then we'll measure that gravity. And in the meantime, we'll get to dry hopping. But first, I might release just a little bit of gas. Smells pretty good. All right, so let's take a little gravity reading, shall we? We'll take about 200-ish mils out, because there's a fair bit of foam. Once that foam settles, that should give us just enough to get a solid gravity reading. So we'll take about that. That's probably good. Alrighty. And out you come. All right, I'm gonna let that settle down over to the side for a second while we get onto dry hopping. So, super important, make sure you release all the pressure in here before you go opening this. Otherwise, this is just gonna fly off and it could cause injuries and damage a whole bunch of equipment. So, release the pressure. All right, nice. So now we can open the, oh Jesus, I did this tight. Ooh, there we go. Probably doesn't need to be screwed on quite this tight, FYI, it's only plastic. All right, let's open this thing up. And by the way, we are dry hopping with 20 grams each of Amarillo and Galaxy today. So we'll leave these in here for about 4 more days, and then we'll transfer into a keg, cold crash, carbonate it, and you'll see us next time on the tasting video. So let's pop this open. Whew. There we go, throw them in, close it up, and reseal it. Now, you can actually use this to do dry hopping. There's a little dry hopping port in here that you could utilize. I haven't done that yet. I haven't gotten that set up, but at some point in the future, I'll probably do that. And then it looks different, but the principles are essentially the same as dry hopping with this thing here, except just on a smaller, slightly cheaper scale. So let's seal this back up. Now we're just gonna let this keep pressure fermenting. I'm now gonna ramp up the regulator so that it basically carbonates right up to 15 PSI. And then that way we're just saving on a little bit of CO2 when we actually go transferring this into the keg. We don't need to use quite as much carbon dioxide to carbonate the whole thing, because we're gonna use all that natural carbon dioxide that's being formed by the yeast. So it's just a little bit of cost saving, saves us a bit of time. Anyway, that is pretty much that done there. Let's take this little gravity reading now that this has started to settle out. All right. Looking like a pretty decent beer already, to be honest. Keen to see how this one's gonna taste. Normally I taste the sample that I do for gravity, but in the interest of giving you guys the full experience when we actually do our tasting video, I'm not going to do that. So RIP me. All right, we are sitting at, and by the way, normally I would take a gravity reading before dry hopping to make sure that it's actually appropriate time to dry hop, but there was such a strong krausen for the first few days after fermentation, looking at this thing, like there was just no way that fermentation hadn't at least completed primary. So if we try and blow that foam off, we're sitting at about 1.01, maybe 1.009. So we are right at the tail end of fermentation, which is awesome. So those hops will sit away in there for about 4 days, and then we should be pretty well good to go and get this thing carbonated and start tasting it. So thanks for sticking around, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Any questions and feedback, always drop them down below. And we'll see you guys next when we are pouring this into a glass to get tasting on this new XPA. Cheers, guys, and happy brewing. Catch you next time.